Well, welcome to our behind-the-scenes interview with Pastor David as we jump into the For the One series. And David, I got to tell you, I'm so encouraged to hear about all that God's been doing around LCBC. And as we look back 35 years, but even as you mentioned over these past 2 years when, it's easy to get discouraged and think about things slowing down, just the number of baptisms, the number of life change stories. So super excited to hear about all of that.
It's easy, Jason, to kind of get stuck in the mud, so to speak, with what's going on around us and just think there's nothing happening because it's different than what was happening maybe 2 years ago. But that's what was fun, and looking back and saying, man, almost 1,000 people baptized, and then hearing the different stories of Wes Schuylkill or Silas's changed life. And it's like, yeah, God is doing some real good things, and we may not see it. So
yeah, absolutely. It's so cool because, again, most of us aren't seeing or hearing those stories. So It's so great to be able to bring those out and focus on them.
Yeah.
So I want to jump right in. You had said something in your message, which I believe is totally true, but I would love to just kind of hear your take on maybe why it happens. You said, the longer we've been part of the 99, as you were talking through the parable of the sheep, the longer we've been part of the inside, the 99, the easier it is to lose focus on the one. Yeah. I'm just curious from your perspective, why is that? Because I don't necessarily think it's malicious or maybe we even know we're doing it. But why does our focus naturally shift away and maybe more towards ourselves?
Yeah, I think part of it, Jason, is we're not around as many people probably that are outside of God's family. And so we all start kind of talking our own language and thinking about the same things. And we start distancing ourselves, again, not maliciously, not purposely. It just kind of happens. The way we've talked about it for a long time is we described ourselves as being this lifeboat. And you think about if you're pulled out of the water, you're getting pulled into the lifeboat, then you're all wet, you're sloppy, you're just happy to be there, and you start getting dry and you start getting warm. And I suppose in a lifeboat, I don't know, they throw towels around you and you start warming up, and all of a sudden you're warm, you're dry, you're settled, you've calmed down, and now there's more people out in the water. When they pull them in, they're going to get you wet, they're going to get you messy. It's like, I'm finally dry now. Why mess me up and why get me dirty and wet again? And I don't think we intend it to be that way. I think it just kind of happens, and we don't even know it. I think that's what's sad for a lot of churches, where a lot of churches become so self-absorbed, and they're in the lifeboat, they're warm, they're comfortable. Now let's just take care of us and keep feeding me and keep warming me. And all of a sudden, they're so far away from people that are still in the water that need to be pulled into the lifeboat, and they just forget about them.
So you've been a pastor a long time and leading at LCBC for over 30 years. And so how have you intentionally, try to fight against that current of focusing on those who are already here, already convinced, already, again, like you said, safe and doing okay?
Jason, I think that's a constant drift where the pull is always to take care of us, because all of us are selfish people. I mean, I'm a selfish person, and I want what's comfortable for me and most comfortable for me. And so the tendency is to say, take care of me, tell me the things I want to hear, feed me the things I want to be fed. And we've got to say, but that's not what Jesus was about, which goes back to the for the one again. And that's totally what that verse is saying in Luke 15. We could focus on the 99, but then we're going to miss out on what Jesus is saying is most important. And what I love about LCBC is just that distinction, I think. Jesus invites us to go out, look for the one, and we do. And I think that's part of why LCBC has grown over the years, is that consistent saying we're going to keep going after the one. And I think most churches, they'll talk about it, but then when it comes to doing it, then they bail out because it's going to cost us money, or it's going to get me wet, or there's going to be people coming into the church that look different than me or think different than me, vote different than me, and say, I don't think I want to be around this kind of people, so let's not keep going and looking for the one. And you just drift. And so I think for me, one of my biggest responsibilities has been over the last 31 years is just keeping us focused and saying, let's not lose that focus.
Well, thanks for leading us in that way. And again, we get to hear those stories, and because you lead that way and because you push us to do so. And so grateful for all of you who do that, who have that culture of inviting and looking for the one. Thank you for making LCBC what it is and having that heartbeat that Jesus had.
And Jason, I think that's why we constantly, in all of our gatherings, are showing stories. It's just that constant story of, so tell me again, is this working or not? Are people being pulled into the lifeboat? Are lives being changed? And so I know for me personally, it's just so encouraging to hear a Silas say, man, my life was really a mess, and then it was changed by Christ. And it may be somebody whose life wasn't a total mess, but all of us are a mess. And somebody's life may look more normal, but still it's been changed by Christ. And so that's why we tell the stories again and again, just to keep us going and say, man, it's working. God is doing something.
I love that. So obviously a lot of exciting things coming down the line that you even highlighted tonight. as you look to the future of LCBC and even knowing that, hey, some things are going to be changing and even your role and what that's going to look like, but what are you most excited about as we go forward?
So Ephesians 3:20, we talk about a lot around the church. And back when we were 150 people, we would just dream and say, what if God did more? The verse says God can do immeasurably more than we would ever think to or even dare to ask or imagine. And so that was true with 150 people, and now God has done more than we ever thought possible around LCBC, and that's exciting. But that same verse is also true now with 20,000 people, and looking and saying, okay, God can do immeasurably more than we would ever dare to dream or even ask or imagine right now, today. And so to think, man, it's wide open as to where God is going to take this. And so I look at the people that are a part of LCBC and just everybody's desire to reach the one. I look at our staff and say our staff is primed to go. And so I'm excited about the future of LCBC and think it's real bright, as long as we stay focused and not get sidetracked.
Yeah, absolutely.
We constantly have to talk about, one of the ways we stay focused is talking about there are good things and then there's what's best. And a lot of good things that we could get pulled into, and a lot of good things over the years we've said no to, that a lot of people have wanted us to get involved in, and they're good things. But we said, no, if we do that, we won't be able to then focus on what's best, which is introducing people to Jesus. And I think that's going to be a challenge even moving forward, because all of us have ideas. Man, wouldn't it be good if we, and you kind of fill in the blank, and there's always, wouldn't it be good if, yeah, but it wouldn't be best. So I think that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it's a constant wrestle, the good and best.
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
So I want to end on a real practical note. You challenged us, even as we think about this For the One initiative, just spend some time talking to God and then respond to the nudges as he leads. And so could you give us some ideas practically of what that could look like even over the next few weeks as we engage through this series and we want to spend time talking to God? How would you recommend? Where do we start? Yeah,
so Jason, this is one of those kind of conversations for Ruth and I that I tend to avoid because I know we're going to struggle with it. We're not going to be on the same page right away. And so it's almost like, oh, let's just keep putting it off. So first thing I'd say is just have the conversation. If you're married, if you got a family, then start the conversation. Just say, hey, what do you think? How's God nudging you in this moment? And if it's like Ruth and I, then one of us will say, he's nudging me this way. They'll say, I don't think so much. And so we've got to go back and forth. And I know even for me personally, where in my head I think, okay, this is where I think God's going to take us. But then, literally just 2 days ago, riding in the car, I just got this kind of burning sensation thinking, what I've been thinking isn't consistent with other thoughts that I've had. And so maybe God's nudging me for something much different than I thought. And so it just takes time to process that, though. And so if we wait until the last minute and just sitting in our seats say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, that's good, but we're probably missing out on what God wants to do. And it's when we allow ourselves to get out there on the edge and say, okay, God, I'm going to follow you. I don't know how this is going to work. That's when exciting things happen in our lives. And a lot of times as followers of Jesus, we feel like it's all kind of mundane and not that exciting, but it's because we've never gotten out there on the edge and truly followed the nudges of God. And so I think it's an exciting thing. For couples, it's an exciting thing for families. And I talk about it with kids too. I remember my mom all the time when we were little, and I hated it when she would do this, but I think now back about it, and would be riding in the car, would see somebody pulling a boat behind their car, and she'd kind of go, we could have a boat, but we've chosen not to do that. We chose to give our money to God. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'd rather have the boat right now. But it's just a way of kind of instilling in us that, it's not about a boat. It's not about the pool table or whatever else I'd always dream about. It's about giving to God. So
I love that teachable moment. As a father with young kids, that resonates a lot.
Yeah, good.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you for making LCBC what it is, and want to encourage you, just again, as Pastor David said, let's go start the conversation. Right? We don't want you to be part of something if God's not nudging you, but start the conversation, start talking to God, start talking to your family, and see where he leads. And we're excited for the future, excited for the rest of the series, and just to continue to hear about how God is shaping the future of LCBC.
And Jason, it definitely is okay. If God nudges you not to be a part of this, that's totally okay. I would just say make sure that God is nudging you not to do it. Don't not do it just because you never talk to God. And so silence and not being a part of the discussion isn't God's nudging. That's just you bailing out. But if you talk to God and he truly says don't do it, then don't do it. And that's totally fine. So
that's great. Thanks for that reminder. And thank you for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, guys.